Mr. Chair, I can't disappoint Dakota. Mr. Chair, and Dakota, what's your last name?
It's Mr. Chairman. My last name is Moore.
Moore. I'm sorry. Mr. Chair and Mr. Moore. Let's be official and formal.
Well, we're not that formal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. According to my research, you tell me if I'm wrong in your estimation, I mentioned private gun sales earlier, and a large percentage, I found 40%-ish, folks purchase a gun in a private sale where there's no background check required. Is that pretty accurate?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wintrow, that 40% number is based on a decade-old or more than a decade-old survey. Now, there have been new numbers that are presented throughout this past year that are still being analyzed, but there are, I would not concede that it is as high as 40%. What I would say is you are able to obtain a firearm through a private transfer without a background check. But in doing so, it is a federal felony and a state crime in almost every state to sell or transfer a firearm to a person that you know is disqualified from being able to lawfully own that firearm.
Representative Wintrow.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Moore, so you see where I'm going with this, right? My concern is if there's a large percentage of the population purchasing firearms without a background check, and now that percentage of persons can actually hide a weapon in their jacket. My question is, in your mind, are there unintended consequences that could occur for law enforcement and law-abiding citizens if that person, I guess I'm struggling. How do we know who is a law-abiding citizen without a background check? And then without the background check, if you're going to hide it, the concealed carry permit at least gave me one more safeguard that you had to do something, right? So I guess I'm concerned about and wonder from you, do you perceive any unintended consequences from that for law enforcement and law-abiding citizens?
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wintrow, that is a concern that has been espoused regularly regarding this issue. I do not foresee any unintended consequences associated with this because from my experience in actually doing this on a daily basis for a national organization, I'm not a citizen of Idaho, but I do follow this and I do care very much about those individuals within these states. And what I've seen is criminal activity, a criminal mindset, and ill will does not, I guess, have any attributable aspect to an individual, whether they were previously permitted to possess a firearm or not. As a matter of fact, what we've seen over these last few years in the heinous tragedies that have occurred is most of these individuals had actually purchased their firearms lawfully, pass their background check. And so I believe that it is imperative that we give every law-abiding citizen the best opportunity to be able to defend themselves from individuals who at any time might take an ill will towards another individual. So I believe that this will actually improve public safety. Yes, ma'am.
Representative Wintrow. Further questions? Thank you, Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Reverend Sarah Lawal.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to testify today. I stand here as a concerned citizen, a mother, and a minister serving a congregation in Garden City to oppose SB 1389. And I'm just, statistics aside, I am concerned for the safety of our people, and I'm concerned for the safety of our children. That less regulation means more access, more unintended consequences, that guns are made to kill. And one could argue that handguns in particular are made to kill people. I tell my children that all the time because I want them to understand the power behind a gun. And so I think it's prudent and appropriate to allow some core public safety standards like the current permit system to remain in place to regulate such deadly weapons. I struggle daily with the statistics that 80 people are killed every day by guns, 30,000 people a year, almost half of those by suicide. And I'm concerned, so what does greater access mean for that? What does it mean for that? How will we know who is a criminal? How will law enforcement know? How does this make their jobs harder? And I hear that our police and our law enforcement oppose the bill for that reason, that it adds complication to their work. And then it makes it more difficult. And I really would like to hear more from them about what they perceive the consequences of that might be. You know, and I think about how we require our teenagers to get a driving permit and to take some driving lessons. And that seems really prudent and safe to me because a vehicle can be a weapon too. And I want that. I want that for my people, and I want that for the safety of the people of Idaho. So I stand here to respectfully ask for your no vote on this bill, and I will stand for questions.
Are there questions? Representative Batten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Reverend Llewellyn. Did I understand you correctly? You just said law enforcement opposes the bill?
From what I've read and understand,
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Representative Batten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think we have been told complete opposite, that the Idaho Sheriff's Association supports the legislation, as does the Fraternal Order of Police.
I'm talking about current law enforcement. So what I've read and understand is that police officers serving currently oppose this legislation.
Representative Batten.
Mr. Chairman, I think that we'll be having a letter coming. The Fraternal Order Police are current policemen. So I just wanted to make that clear. I was just wondering where you had gotten the information that they were opposed.
Well, I've just been trying, this has been happening very fast, just trying to do as much reading as I can.
Representative Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Reverend. So to pick up on Representative Batt's line of questioning, could you tell us what organization, what law enforcement organization is opposed to the bill?
Reverend.
I'm sorry. I wish I could. What the statement I read is that police are opposed to this legislation.
Follow up, another question, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Reverend. One of the things that concerns me is that when people are testifying on legislation to make statements, that they have facts to back up those statements. So it's concerning if I'm going to make a decision on this particular piece of legislation that I have all the facts, and that when people are making testimony that I can rely on their testimony as true and accurate. So in order to back up that statement, I need to know where you got the statement and where the facts are that would counter what Representative Batt's saying if she's saying the Sheriff's Association, the Fraternal Order of Police. So again, could you tell me what organization, law enforcement organization you have that is opposing the bill?
Certainly, Representative Crane. The statements I'm reading are coming from Moms Demand Action in Everytown for Gun Safety.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Crosty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Reverend Wall. Kind of along the lines of perhaps some local folks that have publicly declared their opposition to this. Were you aware of the Boise Chief of Police, Bill Bones, the Meridian Chief of Police, Jeff Levy, and the Garden City Chief of Police, Rick Allen, who recently had submitted op-eds opposing 1389. Were you aware of those?
Representative McCrosty, I was not aware of those. I've just been doing as much reading as I can, but I'm very pleased to hear it.
And Mr. Chairman, one more.
Crosty.
Reverend Wall, one of the things that you talked about was a concern for public safety, the folks in your community, and you mentioned suicide rates. So is there a concern that in passing this legislation that the availability of guns would make it easier for folks who are in desperate state of mind who might be committing suicide, that action is more readily available to those in with that state of mind.
Representative McCroskey, yeah, my concern lies in greater access. So without a permit system in place that where the state is advocating on behalf of responsible gun ownership, and that sensibility stands there, that loosens up in such a way that then how do we know? How do we know who's responsible? What is the level of responsibility that we expect? And in increasing my concern is increasing the number of guns that are just out and concealed, and the people that carry them, and what that means for access for everybody and safety for everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Wolf. Welcome to State Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I come as a concerned citizen in support of 1389. I have had a concealed weapons permit for the last 15 years, and I wish to speak about my opinions. We've heard a lot of facts today, and I want to share 3 opinions that I have about permitless carry. If someone is already carrying open, it makes sense to me that they would be able to conceal their weapons and just be more subtle about what they are carrying. When I first came here, I was surprised to see people carrying in public in an open fashion, and I would have been more comfortable if they had had the choice in the city to be carrying concealed. It's just an opinion. My second point is that it should be just as easy for someone to access a concealed weapon for a citizen that is a law-abiding citizen as it is for a criminal. I don't think it should be harder for someone to be carrying concealed than it is that's a law-abiding citizen than it is for a criminal to easily access. My third point is that I want those who are considering committing a crime to think long and hard, to wonder if there is somebody out there that is carrying concealed. I want them to know that in Idaho, it's very likely that there is going to be somebody there that has a concealed weapon, that we are comfortable with ourselves, that we are comfortable having a way to protect ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there questions?